Welcome back to DevelopLex. Today we have Richard with us, and we have a really cool conversation ahead. I want you to say for the entire time, there's some big things that are going to be happening in Lexington next year, and we're going to talk through what that looks like. DevelopLex, we talk about real estate development, community development, economic development, and a lot of what goes into the community development filters into the economic development, filters into the real estate development. If those are your two favorite pillars, you're really going to want to see what we're going to be talking about today. So, Richard, when you introduce yourself, how do you introduce yourself in 2025?
Oh, that's a great question. I guess in Lexington, I'd say that I run an organization called CivicLex that's working to strengthen the civic health of our community. And for us, that means how our community makes decisions, right? How can we make decisions in a better way? How can we solve our biggest problems as a community? And for us, we're trying to make it easier for us to do that in Lexington.
Terrific. And so CivicLex is pretty much a household name at this point in time.
Thanks.
Been around less than 10 years. Mm-hmm. How did it get started? What's the purpose that you're hoping people are like, oh, CivicLex does this, and they can rattle off that very briefly?
Yeah. So we're about 8 years old. I started CivicLex really with the goal of trying to figure out how we can get more people involved in decision making here in Lexington. I'd gotten this small grant from the Knight Foundation to do a sort of civic project in Lexington, and I started a project around how we could use the public transportation system to improve access to civic information. And around that time, I got connected with some folks who were interested in figuring out for their existing nonprofit what that could look like. It had been dormant for a couple of years, and they were interested in figuring out what the future for that was. And sort of collaboratively, we came up with the idea of CivicLex. What would it look like to build a new type of institution that people can go to when they're looking to get involved in their community, regardless of what perspective they come from, regardless of what background they come from, regardless of who they know. Could we build an organization that helps people plug into how we make decisions as a community? And that, at the time, I don't think we thought about it as this concept of civic health, but that's sort of where we are now. What is the health of the civic life of our community? And how can we improve that? And for us, that ultimately comes down to three things. It's helping people understand and get involved in local issues here in Lexington. It's helping people connect with their neighbors. And it's helping our whole community try out new ways of making decisions that more meaningfully engage the community and provide better information for decision makers.
That's very cool. You are definitely making the civic health of Lexington better. Just being able to see the news that you all create yourself. It's not just a regurgitation of another media outlet. The unbiased, there is not a bias I read at all.
We try really hard.
And I can tell and the comprehensiveness to where you start getting your newsletters, which everybody should go and subscribe to.
Yes.
To CivicLex's newsletter. It is powerful. And then you also start to see how many committees and task force and council doesn't just have the typical council meeting. They also have their work session, and then they had their committee meeting before that, and everything that goes into what runs Lexington Fayette Urban County government. And you all have something very exciting coming up that is really neat to see Lexington be a leader in. Yeah. So lead into it a little bit about what the charter is.
Yeah.
And how cities create charters. We all know that there's a constitutional drafter, that both the state had drafters, the United States had drafters. But is it correct to say our city's version of Constitution is our charter? What's the best equivalent to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what we tell folks when we're trying to explain what the charter is. It's basically the city's constitution. City charters are really the organizing and governing documents for how a local municipality runs. And I think people will be kind of surprised to know that they're actually not that old. The concept of having a city charter really came about in the early 1900s. There were, previous to that, certain governing documents for communities, but an organization called the National Civic League, which was founded by Teddy Roosevelt and a handful of other folks at the time, really popularized the idea of having a clear document, what they called a model city charter, to set out the rules for how a community could govern itself. And part of it was getting all of that sort of centralized into one place, but part of it was also about building a standard of what those should look like across the country. And up until that point, different communities worked in wildly different ways, and the model city charter really set the sort of framework for most American cities. In Lexington, we have our charter dates back to the city-county merger in 1974, and that the document is a little bit different than what a model city charter would look like because of our merged city-county government, which is a really unique feature that, in my opinion, is one of the best things we have going in Lexington. But it sets out everything from how taxing districts are structured to how the mayor is voted on and what the mayor's powers are, to council, to boards and commissions, to frameworks for the city's comprehensive plan, to all of these different, like everything, fire, police, all of that is set by the city charter. And the city legally follows the charter. And so it's kind of, the most important document in local government that you've never heard of. And we're really excited to be launching a process that this March will take a look at the city charter for the first time since 1998 and recommend potential changes to it.
SVN Stone Commercial Real Estate is a full-service commercial real estate firm located in Lexington, Kentucky. Affiliated with the SVN International Network, SVN has over 200 offices across the globe. The SVN Stone team consists of experienced commercial real estate advisors in the heart of the Bluegrass. SVN helps their clients with commercial property sales, leasing, investments, and property management. Let SVN help you with your commercial real estate needs. Check us out at svnstone.com.
So city charter, what we see at council are typically resolutions and ordinances.
Yeah.
Those don't affect the charter.
They sort of touch the charter, right? But they're not changes to the charter. Yeah.
So if I wanted to say a council person only worked 4 days a week, then that's not an ordinance, that's not a resolution, that's charter.
Correct. It's in the charter.
Interesting.
In Article 4. Yeah.
In Article 4. That's awesome. So how difficult is it to change the charter, to make improvements to it over time and make sure that it's adaptable to what we need as a city today?
It's quite challenging. The charter's only been amended a handful of times since it was adopted. There have been several attempts. And there are really two pathways that one can go about, or that the city can go about making changes to the charter. They can form a charter review commission that is a governmental commission, or they can work with an external organization to recommend changes to the charter. And then whatever changes go to the charter have to go on the ballot. They have to be voted on by the general public. And so, changes to the charter can either be put on the ballot through a petition, right, where you're just getting tens of thousands of signatures, because it has to be a certain percentage of the last mayoral vote, or council can put forward an ordinance to put it on the ballot. And so what we're doing through our process is, as an external organization to local government, we're not part of local government, we are going to be convening this thing called a Civic Assembly. that we can get into in a minute, to look at the charter, recommend some potential changes. Those changes will then be presented to council, and council will have the option to either put them on the ballot or not put them on the ballot. And if they get put on the ballot, they would be up for for the general election in November of 2026.
Cool. So what's this assembly look like? How do people get involved? How do people what walk us through what an assembly is? It's a foreign topic.
It is, yeah. So civic assemblies are, if you want to get like really nerdy, they're like rooted in like ancient Greek, democracy and all of that. But really, what it is it is a body of randomly selected by lottery residents from across your given community that are demographically representative of that community who come together, learn about an issue, deliberate on a potential solution to that issue, and then come to some sort of consensus and present out what they find. I've been said not to say this, but I'm going to. It's like jury duty for public policy. The reason people say not to say that is because it's two things no one likes put together: jury duty and public policy.
Oh, I would love to do jury.
Yeah, well, I don't think we're the typical audience.
Sign me up for jury duty once a year.
Yeah, no, it operates on that same principle, right? On the idea that maybe there are some decisions that we as a community should make without the political incentives of elected officials making them, right? Without having to navigate those political incentives, and
or disincentives.
Or disincentives, exactly. And so I think the thing that's interesting about the opportunity with the Civic Assembly, and I'll talk about how literally ours will be structured, but I think the opportunity is what happens when we take an issue like what we're going to be focusing on in this. Around the city charter, and we put it in front of residents who have really no history, maybe, of getting involved in local government decision making. I know I see you around City Hall a lot, and I think that, and I'm sure you see me around City Hall a lot.
You got to learn that camera angle on GTV3 that you're.
I've been caught by that a couple times. Yeah, making. You've got to, if you're in it, you got to sit really stone faced. Otherwise, it's archived forever. And there are a fair number of people that show up to city meetings and show up to participate in city meetings. More when there's a contentious issue. But the interesting thing about an assembly is that it avoids the sort of same people that are always involved, and they're important. We need to have them involved. The people that, like you and me and many other people that are always there to participate in the process, serve a really important role. But we don't often get to hear from sort of everyday folks around town about what their perspectives are. And the interesting thing about an assembly is that it not only puts those folks in a role where they're engaging in the process, but it puts them in a really serious decision-making role, and it equips them with the information that they need to make a thoughtful decision.
Interesting. So you mentioned that survey that's out right now. What's on that survey?
So we have a survey out right now. You'll see these little cards around town. And they, what we're trying to do is narrow down the list of topics that this assembly is going to focus on. So I think we have 7 on there right now. And we got to those 7 by looking at the charter and trying to figure out what are the things that could be, serious potential changes to how our city functions, but not so wildly disruptive that it would be like messing with taxing districts. Like that would be very, very disruptive to government. And so the things we're looking at are like how, a lot to do with council. So how is council structured? How many people are on council? How many people do they represent? How many districts do we have? How long are their terms? How much are they paid? How are their districts set? How do we do redistricting as a community? And then a few other things like how often do we review the charter? Like I said, it's been since 1998. It's the last time the city did a charter review. Maybe it should happen more often than that. Other communities do it every 5 or 10 years. And what's the role of public engagement in local government? And is there a place for that in the charter? So we have these sort of 7 issues, and the survey is designed to get us from 7 down to 2, to figure out, there's only a set amount of time that we're going to be working with this assembly. What are the topics that folks in Lexington have the most to say about, right? Maybe not where they agree the most or where they disagree the most, but what are the things that are sort of animating our community that we should, point this assembly to work on?
Craftsman Contractors is Central Kentucky's one-stop shop for roofing, windows, siding, and gutters. CraftsmanContractors.com/contact us will get you straight to the form you need so that their team will get in touch about your project. Or just text Steven at 859-246-0108. When they finish your project of windows, siding, gutters, or roofing, you'll see what they mean when they say we build with integrity. Interesting. Those are good topics to focus in on.
Yeah.
They've each crossed my mind in some way, where you see these council folks that are part-time,
Yeah.
making part-time money that's not even 2025 money, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're answering my call, and I
Yeah.
might be complaining a little bit.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
different folks have different perspectives on that, right? I mean, I think talk to some people and, they're like, this is a full-time job, and it's a job that, should be compensated full-time. And when it's not, the folks that can run don't necessarily, represent all walks of life in Lexington. But then, there are other people that feel equally as strongly that, no, this is service. This is community service. And, if you're compensating people for community service, are they in it for the right reasons? And I think the thing that is the power of doing an assembly, I think, and the structure that we've built, is that, we're hoping to really have people, it will be a demographically representative group. And by demographically representative, I mean along age, education, race, political party and registration, and geography across the city. And so what we're really expecting are pretty wildly divergent views on a lot of these topics. And in a time where, folks that don't agree with each other have a hard time even having a conversation like around the Thanksgiving table. I'm not speaking from experience by any means. Maybe there's something there, right? Like what can happen if we can get together, people from different perspectives, different backgrounds, and solve a problem together? And I think that's something that we're really hoping to help stimulate with this program.
Very cool. And so, survey is going to lead into what topics the assembly
Yes.
will look at.
Yes.
How's the assembly created?
Yes. So the way that we build the assembly is going to be through what is called a sortition process or a lottery process. So essentially 10,000 households across Lexington, starting right now, early December, are going to be getting this card in their mailbox, randomly selected. So we got a list of all residential addresses, homes and apartments from the PVA's office, and we used a random number generator to select 10,000 at random from there. Those 10,000 households will each get a card. On this card is a little QR code. And if you scan this QR code, there's also a website if you are QR code averse. When you scan this QR code, it will take you to essentially an application. And anyone in your household can fill out the application. Everyone in your household can fill out the application. And in that application, we'll be asking for your name, your address, so that we can verify you're one of the people that got the postcard. But then we'll be asking for your demographics. And some other questions that can help us determine if we're getting a fully representative sample of Lexington. Our hope is to get a 5% response rate from these 10,000 surveys. So we'll have 500 people. We would love it if we could get more. So if you get this, please fill out the application. And then from that, what we'll have is this list of people that with all of their demographic information. And you put that into this program called Panelot. And what it will do is you plug in the demographics of your community, how many people are male, female, how many people are of what ages, how many people make how much money, how many people from different geographies will be using council districts, how many Democrats, how many Republicans, how many independents. And then from that, it pulls all of the demographic information of the folks that registered, and it builds as many random panels of people that are demographically representative of your community as possible. So if, a third of Lexington makes under 50,000, it will pull a third of people that have said that they make under 50,000. And then from that, we're hoping to get somewhere between 3 and 10 of those panels that are representative, and we will literally put them into a hat and draw out one. And so the idea is that you have this like triple randomization, right? So random addresses are getting the postcards. People then fill those out. Then random selection happens in that sortition process. The random selection happens in who is on each panel, and then you pick out one of those panels randomly. And that is then the assembly. And there are processes for alternates if people drop out and all of that. But the idea is that it is truly random people from across the city. And that's how we arrive at our panel.
And when's this going to be?
So this will be happening. The postcards are out now. People will be getting them in their mailboxes any minute. And then they have until the end of the year to fill out the application. In January, we'll draw our panel. If we don't have enough people to get a few panels to choose from randomly, we'll send out more postcards. So we're really hoping this first run gets it. And then we'll know who it is in mid-January.
The right partner can make or break your development project. That's why Bowman's integrated services, from landscape architecture to planning and engineering, are trusted by the region's top developers. With deep roots in Lexington and the backing of a national network, Bowman has helped shape some of Central Kentucky's most iconic projects. They know the land, the process, and what it takes to get things built. Ready to move forward with confidence? Call William Hodges, Regional Leader, at 859-309-6501.
So then they're going to be met at Transy, or
Yep.
the assembly space.
Yep.
With topics ready, a panel ready, and then from there it's going to be like the Super Bowl or watching the Masters, where people like that.
Yeah.
Big things are going to be happening in that small little table.
That's right. Yeah, so we'll have 36 people on the panel. They will convene over 6 to 8 sessions. We're planning for 6, and then we have 2 overflow if we need them at Transylvania University at the Student Center there. One thing I will say is that participants will get paid $1,200 each. We have childcare stipends for folks that need it. We have transportation stipends for folks who need it, and they will be fed many times over the course of their presence in the assembly. And so they will come together at Transy on these 6 dates in March, maybe 8. And you spend the first little bit of time, the first session, getting to know each other, right? Because these will be people that have never met, and they have to make a big decision together. So they'll get to know each other, and then they'll start to learn about the charter. And so we'll have educational materials prepared, we'll have presentations, we'll have testimony from folks in local government about how the charter is currently structured. And then they'll learn about the topics. We'll have several educational sessions with them about the 2 topics that are selected. And then from there, we'll take testimony and public comment on those topics. So, if the topic is redistricting, we'll probably have people that were on the last redistricting commission for the city come and give testimony. Right? We'll have council members come and give testimony about that. We'll have people that had their district changed that were frustrated by that last time, because that happened, if you may recall, from the last redistricting process. We'll have them come and testify if they want, and present their perspectives, right? And our hope is to have countervailing perspectives, right? Have people from different sides of different issues presenting, just like you would in a trial. And then once we get through that testimony period and the public comment period where anyone will be able to come in and give comment, then it will move into a deliberation phase, where the 36 folks will get into smaller groups and start hashing through what some potential solutions could be to the topics that they're discussing. They'll then propose, after maybe 1 or 2 sessions, they'll propose those solutions to the group, and then they will start a group consensus building. And the goal is, at the end of the process, that people reach a consensus, that a vast majority of the people on the assembly feel good about a recommendation that's coming out of it. And if we can't get to a vast majority, we'll do a majority-minority sort of opinion. But the idea is that over these 6 to 8 sessions, that'll probably total 30 hours in some, that folks are really learning in a deep way about some of the most sort of fundamental questions of representation and accountability and transparency in our community. They'll hash out those problems together. They'll hear from experts. They'll hear from people affected. And then they'll try and come up with a solution that would better serve our community. And they may come to a decision, well, actually, things are pretty good the way they are. We shouldn't change them, and that's okay. They may decide to go one way or another way on a topic. We don't know what the decision's going to be coming out of it because we don't even know who's going to be in it, much less what they're going to decide. But I think for us, it's this sort of experiment and exercise in what does it look like to give everyday folks a really meaningful say over a decision that will significantly impact our community.
DevelopLex is also sponsored by Community Trust Bank. Hi there, this is Cam Dacey, Commercial Loan Officer at Community Trust Bank and avid DevelopLex and Middle Tech podcast listener. Community Trust offers a wide variety of home loans, commercial loans, and small business loans to suit your financial needs, as well as mobile banking, internet banking, and bill pay. Their friendly and professional staff would love to assist you at one of their 6 Lexington locations. Community Trust Bank is committed to building communities built on trust. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, subject to credit approval.
And it's very cool to think about how, the way I kind of imagine it, and we're sitting here at McConnell Springs today where Lexington truly was first started, settled.
Yeah.
And you'd have to join everybody together, and there wasn't a Granicus software. There wasn't GTV3 to report it. You were all in the same room and caring about making a better city or making a better town or village that you're in, and how that just naturally, organically happened, and now we have Lexington.
Yeah.
And it's a cool concept to be able to simplify it back to meaningful involvement.
Yeah. I think there's so much of our modern times, so many of the problems that we face in our modern times is from a sort of this feeling that people have that they don't really have any agency over their lives. You can see it in the economy, you can see it in society, you can see it in culture, you can see it in politics, where people feel like decisions are being made to them, that they don't have any say, whether it be on if they can have a better financial situation in their lives, or what decisions political leaders are making, or even what music you listen to, right? If you're listening to Spotify and just getting your algorithm. And I think that in that sort of crisis of agency that we have here, there's something really beautiful and special about giving people a real sense of agency, right? And maybe some of our biggest problems that we face as a society right now can be solved by meaningfully engaging people. And I don't mean in some sort of advisory role, but what does it look like for people to really, truly have a say over their own lives? And I think this is an exciting opportunity to make that possible for some folks. We're excited to see how it goes.
That's really neat. So after the assembly creates a recommendation.
Yeah.
Where does it go from there?
So from there, the assembly itself will present out its recommendations to the Urban County Council. We're probably in April or May. We have asked council on, in council meeting to commit to listening to and responding to those recommendations. Whatever changes, if there is a change that comes out of the assembly process, it will have to go on the ballot. And so what we have asked is that council does not make any changes to it, that they either put it on the ballot if they choose, or they provide a response as to why they're not to the assembly. Because we're asking these folks to give up 30 hours of their time. People are really busy, and we're compensating them for
30
that time.
times 36 souls.
Yeah, 30 times 36 souls. That's a lot of time missed with kids and missed with your family, and and so we think that it is the right thing to do to honor that with a response. And so, we hope that if the assembly recommends a change to the ballot, that council will then, or a change to the charter that will need to go on the ballot, the council will put it on the ballot. But obviously we can't control that. They're human beings and they can do what they want to do. But the affirmation that we've heard from council is that they will do that, and that they will listen to and meaningfully respond to the results that come out of this. And I believe that they will. Yeah. And then the public will vote on it.
So it's going to go to council as one of the ways, either get tons and tons of signatures to put something as a referendum on a ballot.
Yeah.
Or have it be a ordinance.
Yeah.
To be put on to the ballot. So they're going to take something or not take it as is, and then put it on the ballot for November of 2026.
Yep, for the public to vote on. And I think that's a really, important process. So, we're not the first people to use assemblies. They've been used over 700 times in the past couple decades across the world to make really meaningful decisions. I think that some of the highest profile ones, Ireland as a nation used a citizen assembly or civic assembly to decide really contentious issues around election reform and around high profile, hot button social issues in the country. And the thing that's so interesting in looking at Ireland's processes or any of these other ones is that the percentage that something came out of the assembly, right, with like 65% in favor, 35% opposed, is almost the exact same numbers that it was adopted by on the ballot. It's like 1 or 2 percentage points difference. And I think what that shows is that these mini publics, right, these groups of people that are demographically representative of your community, when you really control for that, when you really try and make sure that you're reaching every political party and ideology, every socioeconomic background, when you really have all those folks in the room, it's actually a pretty good representation of what the general public feels like, because it is a representation of the general public. And we don't often get that in council chambers, in terms of who's showing up for public comment. We don't often get that on task forces or boards or commissions. And I think this is an opportunity to see what that's like for Lexington. And our hope is that people see the intention and care, in particular civic leaders see the intention and care that's being put into this process, and see the value in that, and that can impact how the city does things moving forward. I can see maybe not this exact same process, but a similar process being used for really contentious issues. We've had huge contentious issues just in the past few weeks in Lexington, right? Whether it's City Hall or Maxwell Street zone change hearing, there are really contentious issues that the city is very, feels very split on. Both of those were 8-7 votes. And, what does it look like to broaden out who's participating in decisions like that so that our full community is represented? Every ideology, every demographic, every background. And that people who don't typically have the time and bandwidth, because they're caring for their kids, or they're caring for an elderly parent, or they're busy in school, or they've got 2 jobs and can't show up to City Hall. What does it look like to bring those folks, again, not in just providing public comment, but in making a decision together? And I think that actually can be a recipe for like solving some of our most contentious issues in this community.
It's very interesting because you hear about like a statistical sample is over 2,000. You're going 10,000.
Yeah.
And then we say we elect 15 people to make this. There's going to be 36. I would imagine there's a lot of times where you have overlaying variables that you're like, wow, that 8-7 vote, it wouldn't have just been that times 2 if it was 30 people. There might have been some more fine responses casting votes, and you get a better resolve of the city that way.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think, I think you would also get, right, a little bit more nuance too. I think that it's, any decision that our city's making, I think it is our tendency as a community and as people to flatten nuance a lot, right? And we're like, oh, well, this is a black or white issue. Like, I either feel this way or I feel this way. And the truth of the matter is that I think from where I come from in my perspective, personal perspective, is that, a lot of these things are actually really sticky. And the more and more over the past 8 years that I've understood about government and the decisions that government has to make, and all of the different factors that it has to take, the more and more I appreciate how nuanced and complex some of these decisions are. And that is not something that is rewarded. Nuance and complexity is not something that has political incentives in favor of it or algorithmic, incentives in favor of it. Like, no one rewards nuance. But I think it's real, right? And I think we do ourselves a disservice as a community when we don't honor nuance and look at that nuance and say, multiple things can be true at the same time. And how we hold those 2 things together, I think is really important. And I think politics often erases that the most, right? And so I think that, again, it's like, what happens when you put like everyday folks that don't have to run for re-election, when you put a decision in their hands? Is there more space for that nuance and subtlety and complexity? Maybe these issues aren't quite so black and white.
That's terrific. Well, thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Making Lexington a stronger, more healthy city because the civic health is getting better. Civic health is such a cool term I've been thinking about through our conversation of just how many other cities reach out to you saying, we want a CivicLex, which I assume are a lot.
Yes. I think over the past few years, we're approaching 200 different communities across the country that have reached out to us, wanting to know how they can do something similar. Because I think like a lot of folks, when you think about if you want to learn about something, if you want to check out a book, you know where to go. You go to the library, right? What happens, like, where do you go when you want to get involved in your community? That's a hard decision for a lot of people, or a hard thing to find an answer to. And I think we want to be that answer for folks. There were people know instinctually, like, oh yeah, if I want to like get involved in this decision about, what XYZ that the city's deciding on, I'll just go talk to folks at CivicLex. That's where I go. And we want to be a space that everyone feels like welcome, and that their perspective and experience is really important.
That's great. Well, thank you for creating such a cool model for Lexington, and then also to make that more perfect union that drafters talked about, but city by city inside of America.
Yeah, going out of 1 250 into the next,
Thanks, Richard.
Great. Thanks so much.